Hi, everyone. This is Chris Willman with Variety. Welcome to a very special conversation as part of our FYC Fest with key figures behind the music of the upcoming James Bond film, No Time to Die. We're pleased to offer a whole lot of people that don't need any introduction, so we'll keep it very brief so we have more time to hear them talk. We have multiple Grammy winner Billie Eilish, multiple Grammy winner Finneas, one of the legendary guitarists of rock, Johnny Marr, and one of the preeminent film composers of this or any time, Hans Zimmer. So thank you so much for being with me and in the same room virtually, which I know you're all excited about because you haven't all seen each other in a while. So first, just let me ask, this is the first time any of you have worked on a Bond project, as far as I know, right? I know, Hans, you've been friends with Robert Broccoli, but this is a first for you, and you brought Johnny in as a first, and Billie and Finneas, obviously, starting your film career with a bang. So I know you did a song for the Roma companion album, but you've leaped in at the top of the game with what kind of movie song you could do. Was this something you all had in the back of your mind at some point that this could happen, being involved in a Bond project?
Not as a realistic idea. It was a kind of dream for years. Like, it was something we talked about all the time. Just in general of how amazing would it be to write a Bond song? Not we're gonna write a Bond song. It was just always, that would be such an honor for anybody that got to do that. And when it became kind of more of a real topic of discussion, it was kind of insane and very surreal and confusing that it was actually happening. And like from then on, it was just like exciting and kind of crazy, honestly.
Yeah.
But you were on it before Johnny and I were, in a way, because you'd already written the song. And I've been friends with Barbara Broccoli for a while. And then my friend Leah Wallach actually said, Hans, I think Barbara would like to ask you something, which, became an obvious thing, what she wanted to ask me. And then it became an obvious thing. I wasn't sure I was going to do it. So I phoned Johnny and I said to him, I have two questions for you. What's the only worthwhile guitar riff to play in a movie? And he said, well, the Bond thing. And I said, yes, right. And then secondly, I said, should we do it? And I think he said something like, we'd be idiots not to have a go. But then the other thing was, the first thing that happened when I got to London was they didn't know which song to pick. And of course, for Bonds, there are 1,000 songs that are being written. So by the time when I pretty quickly heard Billie and Finneas' song, and it was quite obvious that there was only one song that they could possibly pick that had class, charm, integrity, musicality, beauty, was different, was new, didn't try to do the old thing. But would you like me to carry on? I can carry on why I loved the song. And I was really bullish about it, and people were, a Bond song is an important thing. It's like, it carries a lot of weight with it. I mean, to even, it's like somehow lives seem to depend on that you pick the right one, And so I was very bullish, and there was a little bit of sort of hesitation going on from certain parts of the camp. Not Barbara, but so I said, look, guys, it's really simple. You need to get them on a plane. You need to get them to come over. You need to get them to see the movie because they're working in the dark. And so the way I remember it, and my memory might be flawed, but it was like, I said it, you were on a plane, you were sitting there, you were watching the movie, we got to work.
Yeah, Hans summoned us. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing tonight?
Well, I shortly after I started working on the movie, right? I mean, just within days, I started in London with Hans. Pretty much the night I got there to start, Hans told me that Billie and Finneas had written the song. And the weirdest thing was that, and Hans probably remember this, I was like, oh yeah, I see that.
Absolutely.
Weirdly, I hadn't heard the song yet. I heard the song a couple of hours later, I think. We were waiting for a mix of it or something. But the idea of it, of Billie singing the song, I was like, oh yeah, great. I thought it just made sense to me, the sound. And even though I suppose you could look at it from a certain point of view and go, it's kind of unexpected as a sound, because Billie and Finneas' sound is so distinctive and not bombastic. Its power, the tension in it, in the slow songs, comes from what isn't in there, and the performance. I remember saying, Hans, if you remember, Hans, I was like, that's a really great idea, before I even heard the song.
No,
And then, of course, I was really interested to hear how the song turned out. As a fan of Bond, growing up as a British boy during the 70s, and Bond movies, where, you know, some have been great, some songs haven't been great. I was really excited about it, and when I heard this, and I thought it was a brave move, really, because I thought it was a good move for the movie, and I knew it would be great. And then it was just all a matter of keeping the integrity of the sound, really, and not losing your nerve, making it radical.
It fit in with the ideas that I had, and Steve Mazzaro had, and you know, and Barbara, and all of us really had. Carrie had. I just want to remind people that this. Yeah, that was me. I know. That was my beep going off. I'm sorry. It's so fine. It's incredibly elegantly crafted. It's absolutely beautiful. It gets right under your skin. And I don't know when the last time Bond had a #1 song before the movie came out. And then, of course, it all went, you know, now I'm going forward and COVID and everything. But we had I think I can speak for Johnny and me. You know, you can ask them. You can ask Billie and Finneas. But we loved working with them on their song, and we try to honor their vision, because their vision was so right. You know, it was absolutely. It wasn't like it was modern or anything like this or tricky. It was just timeless. It was just a good song that fit into this with a great performance.
I think the obvious thing as musicians, all of us knew before we sort of within 5 minutes of meeting each other, we all kind of knew that if we did the obvious, and even though we've got Hans there who's a master orchestrator, and you just piled loads of bombast on, you would lose the thing that made it totally cool and unique to Billie and Finneas anyway. That made it distinctive, I think. You know, for me, I'm a big fan of the Bond stuff I like. I really like You Only Live Twice, which was a Nancy Sinatra singing it. And then, as I say, you know, as a boy growing up in the 70s, I think the first time I ever went to the cinema, I saw Live and Let Die. I was about 10 or whatever. Yeah. But there's been some, you know, so there's been some really cool tracks, and I'm a big John Barry fan. You know, with my own shows, I used to go on stage to a John Barry track and all of that. I'm a fan. But when they're really good, those songs, the ones I like, they're really evocative. That's the thing, you know, you can attach all these words to it, dramatic or intense or mysterious, but I think evocative is the word, really. And I think No Time to Die, I think the song does that before it added anything on it. So we kind of all knew, like, if you just start piling tons of stuff on, but the process was you had to try stuff out. You know, I remember sitting behind Hans going, wow, Hans is going to put some French horns on it. And then this stuff that I love, Hans and I have worked together a lot, that I love hearing him do, you know, and just exploring, really. And it wasn't like something that was labored on for weeks and weeks. The writing process might have been different, but it's such an elegant song. You get my point. It could have been really easy to just screw it up by being over the top, you know.
Actually, let me ask this, because I never asked the two of you this. So who came up with the very first chord virtually?
It was multiple tries and kind of fails at first, because it was so much pressure just from ourselves to ourselves, because we
Absolutely.
we wanted to make a good song. And so it was many attempts and just nothing that stuck. And then we kind of had to just shut up for a second, and we were on tour in, I think, Texas, and we were like, let's just stop trying so hard. And I was like doing a meet and greet before a show, and Finneas came and he was like, I think I figured it out. And we had this like little studio set up in our green room, and he just had this da, 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 which is just
Yes,
immediately
absolutely.
made
Instantly
sense.
haunting.
You know what I mean? So that was all Phineas. That first, and that right there, you know, when you get that first thing that gets you, it's so much easier to go on. You know, it's really the hard part is the beginning and kind of figuring out what you're gonna do, and then when it gets easier is when you feel that and you're like, okay, I understand, and then it kind of takes you on your own. You know, it writes itself.
We had all of the melodies of this song before we had any lyric, I think, which is very atypical for us. We usually write melody and lyric in tandem. And I think because of the nature of the sort of bondness of the song, or what we wanted the song to have, that we knew that the melodies had to be very precise, and very exact, and very evocative. And so we came up with the melodies together and then wrote like sort of every lyric together, but to fit the melody is my memory. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a really clever major minor sort of bit in there as well, you know. So it's got all that duality. It's like great craftsmanship. That's the other thing, you know.
Yeah, well, it builds. You know, it's by the time it's finished, it sounds like a really big track, and there's not that much stuff on it. I obviously a lot of that's to do with the voice.
Like there's a moment in it where you just sort of unleash that other Billie in there, you know. It's just like, you know.
But that didn't happen until we had your arrangement, Hans and Johnny. That was a sort of after we had the kind of crescendo.
We didn't give her a choice.
Yeah, we had
we knew that we wanted to do something big though, because I didn't want to just have a quiet song that went nowhere, because it's Bond, it's a big deal. You know, we wanted to do the best that we could, and I was like, I gotta give something that I, one, haven't done ever, and two, even if I've done it on my own, nobody's ever heard it before. So it was really exciting. I gotta say, like, the ending result of No Time to Die is so, I am so happy with where we got it to. You know what I mean? There was so many, I mean, we tried stuff out. Remember in London, we did all sorts of shit, and like it was so nice to hear different things to make you more sure of what actually sounded good.
But I loved that, you know, like Phineas, like there was a moment where I think you and me, we were like really getting into the orchestra, and we were using the orchestra. We were using 100 people as if they were a guitar. You know, it's like we were playing the orchestra.
We were.
You know, okay, now go and do this. Now try this. Now everybody da. And then at one point, you just because you were listening, and at one point you just went, okay, I like this, I hate this, I like this, I hate this, and all of us, including Steve Lipson, who was our brilliant, you know, I mean, look, he produced all the Annie Lennox album. He did Slave to the Rhythm with Grace Jones. He did Jeff Beck. He did everything. I mean, he worked with the Beatles. I think he did. Everybody just shut up and everybody just listened to Billie, which I loved, you know, because she knew what the song was, and we in our 100 people toy box, you know, it's easy to lose sight, you know. And then it was just great hearing the artists come in and go, okay, that's good, that's not good, that's good, that's not good. And I think that there's something else which is very important, that I think Johnny, Phineas, and Billie have a very similar aesthetic, you know, and I'm not even sure how aware of it you three are, you know. Just each note needs to have commitment, and it should only be that note and no other note, and don't ruin it by putting a lot of other crap around it.
And how did you decide when to bring the orchestration in? Because I think that's one of the things that's interesting about the song is maybe with a Bond theme, you're expecting the full John Barry right at the start of the song. And then with Billie's song, it's like, oh, this is not going where I thought it was going. And then it does deliver all of that sort of intensity eventually.
There are three orchestral arrangements. There's a Matt Dunkley, there's Hans, and then there is the merging Matt and Hans. And then there is really Phineas going, okay, this bit goes here, chuck this bit. He really ended up being the producer of and what that means is ultimately it's his, it became his, so much of it was about his taste and him taking on that responsibility. It is a responsibility.
Yeah, well, but it's
throw away.
They were so good. Every note of your arrangement and of Dunkley's arrangement were so good that I think, like, I remember Billie and I got given the sort of all of the raw wave files of everything, and we looked through everything and found all of our favorite parts, and then took out a lot and kept it very low in the mix. And I remember sending you back a version where probably a third of it remained, and I remember thinking when I sent it, like, this might really piss Hans off. And you were like, sounds great. And I was so surprised and excited that you felt that way. But every part was so good.
Yeah, listen, Finneas, Billie, if there's anybody we should be pissed off about, it's Johnny. Because as always, he gets the last word. Like, we go through the whole track, and then what's it end with? Ring. There's the last word freak.
That's all I'm about. I'm happy. I'm happy. So I thought it would have been weird with the overall sound. It was a balancing act. I mean, I don't know whether I'll say it for you guys. I thought it should sound like one of Billie's records anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did. I thought I kind of got the feeling.
That's what I liked about it.
Yeah, I kind of got a feeling that would be a good idea, and if the song worked, and we had to try a load of stuff, and we all know the score. We're like, you're trying to find great stuff. So you pile the stuff on and you find the good stuff. And we knew really early on, soon as it started getting loud, it's not as cool.
No,
absolutely. Let's find the loud stuff that we can drop in. We've all made records, and that's kind of how we did it. But it was, no one had to be told. No one had to tell each other, this needs to keep its tension.
Yeah, but again, I mean that. That's again, the magic of that. What Billie said, the magic of those notes at the beginning from Finneas, because they absolutely tell you where you're supposed to be going. They're like a roadmap. They're the North Star because they're full of mystery and they're full of I mean, as Johnny and I would say, they're well moody.
Well moody. Yeah, the whole track's well moody, yeah. But you need the voice really in your face as well, I think.
I know.
Because you need to hear all the closeness. And
let's talk about where the mood came from as far as the lyric, because not every Bond theme has a lyric that directly relates to the story. I mean, Diamonds Forever, great song, but about all it has in common with the movie is diamonds. This one seems like, from everything I've heard, you went pretty specific with something you got out of the script. I know you had read at least a scene to inspire you, and then after Hans came in, you saw the whole film, and that helped in some way. So is there something about the song where maybe just from hearing the song, we don't know the full meaning, and that it will become more apparent when we actually see the film emotionally, what it refers to?
There's definitely a lot in the song that will make more sense, I think, when you do see the movie. But what's funny about that specifically is that we did write it before seeing the movie. I mean, we got told pretty much what goes on, and we got we were sent like the first kind of scene, but we still hadn't seen the movie, so we didn't know all the details or anything. But what was interesting was then when we did get to watch the movie after the song was completely written, there were so many things that I was like, oh, that actually makes even more sense with the lyrics somehow. It's like we were writing with this movie in our brains that we hadn't even seen yet, which was really, really cool to see after the fact, having written it. I thought it was important that Finneas's whole thing that I agreed with was we have to have the title of the song be the title of the movie, and we have to say it, or it doesn't hit as hard, It doesn't do what it needs to do. And so we worked really hard to make it really feel like the movie. I feel like we pride ourselves on that for this song, that we really made it the movie. It's what the movie is, and yeah, it'll definitely sink in, I think, a little more when you see it. But
It's a very bespoke piece. I mean, there's no thing that we wrote with ambiguous intent. Nothing sort of like, oh, this could come out separately from this film. It was totally intertwined in our minds with this film.
Yeah.
And I to echo Johnny's statement, like I think "Live and Let Die" is my favorite Bond theme of all time.
Yeah.
I love "Live and Let Die." I love Goldfinger. Skyfall is one of our favorites, and so it was. We were lucky because the title was "No Time to Die," and that is a good lyric. I don't fault Jack White and Alicia Keys for not writing a song called "Quantum of Solace." I feel like that's a tough.
I bet you they tried.
Yeah.
I bet you they
Rhymes solid.
Think of the songwriters who had to write a song called Thunderball and work it into the lyrics. I mean, that was exactly.
But I think there's another part to this that I worked on a lot of movies, and the best movies are always the movies where the people working on it are just come together. They don't know each other, but somehow they come together and they become like a family, and they're just aiming for the same thing, and they're speaking in one voice, and they have a similar aesthetic going on, and I feel is what happened instantly, pretty much, on this movie. I mean, get them on a plane, and there they were, and everything after that was just making this movie, and everything they had written once it was put to picture, was absolutely off that movie.
The reason Hans has that experience, having made quite a few movies with him now, is because the common denominator is Hans, because Hans puts like-minded people together. In my experience, I've worked with some really, really interesting and really nice people from very different musical backgrounds to me, and you just get along. If there's people's, I find it's very simplistic, but even as a fan of music, that I found that when there's people whose music I really like, I tend to imagine that they're pretty okay people. I just, for some reason, especially if it's emotional music, I think, and it's turned out to be the case when I've worked on stuff with Hans, but. That's because, but anyways, Hans tends to you're good at putting the right people together, I think, Hans. I think that's what it is.
Thank you. Well, it's I listen to their music, and unfortunately for the songwriter, especially for Billie, who is the most exposed and has to, show herself with her voice. You can't really hide. I mean, as you hear who the person is, and you go, oh yeah. I think this will be good. I want to spend time with this person. I want to go and do something, worthwhile with these people. I think this will be good. I think we speak the same language, which is not a language at the end of the day, which is that sort of secret language of music where we can communicate in a slightly different way.
I love collaboration. I think it's now that I've been making music for a long time now. It's the greatest thing, I think. The opportunity to do stuff with people you wouldn't have necessarily thought with, or had the opportunity from a different, especially from a different genre of music or whatever. It's the best. I had it when I first worked with Talking Heads in the late 80s, and there's a bunch of different things. It's always really delightful. I mean, it doesn't always work out great, but I think this has been this kind of, well, it really helped when you got a killer song. That really is a good starting point.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
With the emotion of the song, it might be a spoiler to say exactly what it is that people will find out when they see the scene and how your song was reacting to it. But can you say sort of what the brief was for you in terms of it's a very dark sounding song. So does that reflect a darkness that's in the movie? Obviously, the whole James Bond series has gotten a little bit braver about going dark places, I think, in terms of the character and the relationships he has. So
if we spoil anything, each of us have like a red dot from a scope outside of the window
right now.
Yeah, that'll
you just can't see it.
Hypodermic needle in our necks. I'm not comfortable answering that question directly, but the thing I can answer, because it's public knowledge, is that this is Daniel Craig's last film as James Bond. And I think just that sense of finality of just knowing an actor's, doing their last film as a character was heavy to us and had real weight. And we wanted to kind of honor that. And,
I think that was where the most, pressure came from, just in our own goals for the song, because we wanted to honor his, 15, 16 years of being James Bond. And, that's a long time, and that's a lot of work for a dude. And
yeah, and he was very conscious of it too. It's like, he was involved. He wanted to know that we weren't going to go and to take this lightly.
Which I love. It's very exciting to hear that a person is willing to be that involved after 15 years, when I think, so many people would have just out of exhaustion sort of checked out. And I was impressed to find how hands-on Daniel was. And Billie and I really, although we've seen, Connery Bonds and Brosnan Bonds, like we grew up with Daniel Craig just because of our age, so that he is synonymous, for us.
Also, I think I probably speak for all of us, but the director, Cary, he really knows his stuff. I think he's great. That really helps when the director's also brave and wants it to be radical. He wasn't kind of going, hey, we need, like, he's got to come out of the traps. Like, he was just cool. He's, and he had a lot riding on it, and like all directors, Hans will know much more about this stuff than me, but he'd been in there, he was in the trenches, and he was doing long days, long weeks, and he was under a lot of pressure, and you wouldn't have thought so. He was dead. He's really cool. I thought that was great that he let the musicians. I'm involved because of Hans, and Hans gives me a lot of leeway to do my thing. But Cary's like, okay, you guys know what you're doing, but still, he's clocking it all. So,
and he's got a vision. He's original.
How did you feel when this was about to come out, knowing that everybody in the universe rates James Bond songs from top to bottom, and they fight over them? And Billie and Phineas, previously, probably you've had the comfort of knowing that when you're putting a song out, that you have an existing audience that loves you and is going to be fairly accepting. With this, you're going out to like a wider world of people who maybe are only faintly familiar with the hits or something, and they're rating it against, is it Live and Let Die? Is it Goldfinger? How did you feel about being part of that tradition, knowing that there is a lot of pressure and people were about to hear your addition to the canon?
It was really something to think about, but I wasn't mad about it, because I understand, it's an incredibly well-known and, one of the biggest franchises in the world. And, why wouldn't people have wants for the song that's, the theme to their favorite franchise? That's totally understandable. So to me, it wasn't something that I was like, oh, they don't like it. I was really just like, I totally get that. I totally see that, and I appreciate that. But I also really appreciated the people that were, skeptical at first and then listened and were like, you know what, I actually really love this. And that's what made me feel good. But yeah, I mean, I was just excited to do it in general. I didn't really care who liked it or didn't like it. I just was.
Yeah, it was announced that Billie was singing it before people heard the song, which I think is like sort of double risky, because then people they're only judging their preconceptions about an artist as opposed to actually judging like the work at hand. So
that was the rough period. That was the rough period.
The most flattering comments, just as Billie's saying, and I'll reiterate, the most flattering were like, when I heard it was going to be you guys, I was skeptical, and now that I've heard the song, I really love the song. That was very
my
flattering.
favorite thing is an open mind, especially when it was closed before. I love when people aren't stuck to their pretenses, which I am totally guilty of all the time. I hear that something's going to happen, I'm like, that's ridiculous, that should never be that way, it's never going to be good. And it's important to like keep your mind open and be open to new ways of doing stuff, and then just listen and be like, you know what, actually I was wrong, this is really good.
I remember when Chris Nolan announced Heath Ledger as the Joker, and the world on the internet went mad, going, what a terrible decision. This guy, blah, 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 can't act. The worst decision I've ever heard. And then he blew them all away, of course. It's the same thing. It's like, look, we don't make random decisions. I mean, there were a couple of pretty smart people involved who not only have ears but can feel something, and they heard the song and they heard what Billie and Phineas were doing, and were going. I promise you that was the case. I mean, there were a lot of other songs to go and listen to. There are a lot of other. It's Bond, right? And it was, for me, it was the simplest thing. I heard the song and I went, don't want to hear anything else. That's it.
The first time Barbara
because I don't agree with you that it's dark. I think it's like mysterious, and I think it's like this beautiful scent in beautiful perfume in a night, in a beautiful night. That sort of goes past you. I mean, I just think it's incredibly poetic and elegant. And I think if hey, listen, when it's my last movie, I want somebody to write something that is that poetic and that beautiful and that graceful.
I think just looking at the internet, I felt like the Bond faithful were kind of the most surprisingly accepting of it all, because they were eager for something that went a little bit off the beaten track and that really reflected the way the Bond series has gone under Daniel Craig. And so I was shocked. I saw no negative reaction at all. It was, and I think people were surprised that they loved it so much, who were not your fans. And
but wait, you have to remember one thing. As an artist, and Billie and Phineas were the artists, and I mean, Johnny knows this, I know this, you only hear about the doubters, the naysayers, and the bad reviews, right? I mean, can you remember a single good review in your life? But I can remember like a stack load of, that bad stuff,
So true.
Barbara told us the first time we met her, she very kindly came to see a show of Billie's in
Ireland.
Ireland.
Dublin.
It's called Electric Picnic, right?
Yeah.
Outside of Dublin, like an hour or two outside of Dublin. And she came, and I remember her telling us that day that Daniel Craig's casting announcement, just as you're remembering Heath Ledger's, was not received very well. And so I think just carrying that with us into writing the song, recording the song, it being announced, I was like, well, if, because Daniel Craig became beloved as Bond, so I just kind of thought, well, people change their minds, and
And Barbara and Michael, I mean, our producers, I mean, they're fearless at defending their artists as well. I mean, they really get in amongst it. Didn't you feel incredibly well protected and taken care of? Even that little thing, when we were in the studio and it's Valentine's Day and we're working away, and Barbara's rushing off to some meeting, and then she dashes back in and brings a box of chocolates for us.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the atmosphere we were sort of working in. We were feeling incredibly well protected.
I remember also that right from the as soon as the song arrived, when I was there anyway, that it was really important that Daniel Craig liked it, and I thought it was super cool. I thought it was
absolutely. And Steve Lipson, our engineer, played it for him when it was finished. Made Daniel come to his studio in a really dodgy part of London. Dodgy is the only word that will describe it correctly, by the way. At 8 o'clock in the morning, it was with it pissing down with rain, and made him listen to the song. Daniel just went, play it again, play it again, play it again. And he fell in love.
we have to close, but I just have to ask one more Johnny question, which is how much Johnny can we expect to hear in the score? Because we heard what he did on the song. As you said, there's a lot of great guitarists in the world, but probably not that many that we actually want to hear.
Well, I made sure I played all over it, as every place I could, just
Great.
loud, everywhere. I'm white.
He is so full of shit.
It's do you know, actually on the
Never.
movie,
No. Hang on. I'm answering this one. I know you were asked, but I'm saying this.
that's right.
Never enough.
That'd be a good answer.
Never enough.
There's a lot of noises actually on this. I do enjoy, Hans will notice that, as well as playing just guitar parts. So I like making a lot of kind of noises, like kind of electronic noises and sort of sound design as well. That's kind of pretty good. I won't go into all the details, but there's a thing that you can do with guitars that thing you can't do with synthesizers. So I'm flying the flag for that. just because it's wires. So I really like a lot of that stuff. So there's on this movie, I got a chance to do quite a lot of kind of bugged out sound design as well, which has been really fun.
Actually, and on that, I mean, the song isn't just tagged onto the beginning. The song, the tune runs throughout the movie. I mean, it is part of the storytelling of the movie.
That's the coolest part.
Yeah, it's like the way it's supposed to be. I hate it when they just tag a song on, and then it just feels so redundant. No, we all got in amongst it. Rolled up the sleeves and made some noise.
We were so happy you were able to join us. So thank you, Billie, Phineas, Hans, and Johnny. We can't wait to see the movie. We know it's going to be worth the wait to hear the rest of the music, but we're glad we've had so long to live with the song already. And maybe enough time has passed now waiting for the movie to come out that we'll be able to hear the song kind of afresh over the opening credits. So
it'll be a whole new song.